How do you doing, Mr. Gilchrist?
Very good. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We sure can. So before we go on, a lot of people know about the Minuteman. A lot of people know about some controversies around the Minuteman. But for those who don't know, can you just give a brief introduction about what your group does?
All right. The Minuteman is essentially a multi-ethnic immigration law enforcement advocacy group. Basically, we're the largest neighborhood watch, you might say, insofar as maintaining a vigilance over our immigration policy and laws.
So why is there so much controversy or undue bias in the media against the group, you think?
Philosophies, and this is not something new. I knew when I launched the Minuteman Project 3.5 years ago that I'd be the target of the wrath of not only the media, but groups like La Raza, METCHA, Southern Poverty Law Center, Anti-Defamation League. There's a litany of a list of several groups that certainly want to interfere with not only my free speech and the free speech of many other millions of Americans, but also with our agenda. And that agenda is to keep the nation, the United States, under the rule of law, and also to have an orderly immigration policy of people necessary to continue flourishing our nation as a prosperous nation, and also to guarantee that it will always be a nation that is civilized and governed under the rule of law. And that goes to the character and the integrity of those that we allow to immigrate here.
On the issue of illegal immigration, to me it seems, and I'm coming from sort of a different perspective, I think, than both you and Tex, but would you say that, I mean, your group primarily does a lot of political activism and awareness, but you guys also do have sort of the garb and dress of a kind, and the name even of a kind of militia. Is there any kind of element of vigilantism out there, since arguably they aren't enforcing the law, so you feel that you have to?
Yeah, you can apply the term vigilante to just about anyone or anything. There are two definitions for vigilante if you look in the dictionary. One is a watchman, more of an angelic, beneficial, benevolent type of definition. Then there's the other definition, one that smacks of sinister people from the dark side of society. And certainly I agree there are both those in any type of activism. We try to stay right of center, you might say. Our threats come not only from the ultra-lefties who are violent and hostile, but also from people who align themselves with us from the ultra-right who are violent and hostile. I'm speaking about, you got the Ted Kaczynski Unabombers on the ultra-left, and you got the Tim McVeigh Oklahoma City bombers on the ultra-right, and we're trying to stay away from them because the goal of this is not to create war and acrimony and hatred. It's to bring a reasonable resolution to this chaotic lack of enforcement of immigration laws.
And speaking of reasonable resolution, there's been a lot of talk about, especially in 2008 with McCain as looking like he's going to be the nominee. McCain, one of the masters of, I guess you could call modern-day shamnesty, on reasonable reform. Is it reasonable to say that we should deport the illegal aliens in the country, or do you disagree with that, or do you say the 2 million who have caused felonies and crimes in the country should be deported? Where do you stand on that?
Okay, first, the 2 million who have criminal background should be deported immediately. The other 33 million, in my estimate, there are approximately 35 million illegal aliens currently occupying U.S. territory. They should be given the opportunity to return voluntarily to their homelands and stand in line at a U.S. embassy with an application to enter the United States legally, just like the tens of millions of legal immigrant predecessors, or after for example, the 120-day period that Governor Huckabee, who's a presidential candidate, has suggested, 120 days to return to your homeland. After that, then they would have to be forcefully repatriated. I don't like to use forcefully, but if we're going to be a nation governed under the rule of law, we actually have to enforce those laws. And to the person who's the recipient of that law enforcement, it's always going to be unfair, and it's always going to seem unjust. And I disagree. And it's a brief answer to your question. Yes, I support the repatriation of the 35 million illegal aliens currently occupying U.S. territory, and you can do that economically and through law enforcement officers.
So, when it comes, though, to the immigration policy in general, because you said you would like those individuals to go back to the countries and apply for citizenship, do you think the system itself needs to be reformed a bit, because it's very, very hard for individuals, low-skilled, low-educated, to come into the country and become citizens, those who want to contribute to society, and this is one of the reasons we have so many illegals in the country. Would you say that that's and our system that kind of fosters where, you know, we hand out visas and half the illegals coming over are just overstaying their visas? Do you think we need to have a reform in the system itself?
Oh, absolutely. This problem is not a new problem. It's been in progress for 42 years, since 1965 when it started, due to the lax enforcement of immigration laws under the Johnson administration back in the mid-'60s. But I think the whole system it doesn't have to be decimated and stripped down and ripped apart, but it's got to be rehabilitated, where we have rules that are the rules are on the books. The code of conduct, insofar as our immigration policy and laws are on the books, they have to be enforced. We have a United States Senate, 98% of which have a cavalier approach to our immigration policy. They don't care if it's not enforced, and that's the biggest barrier to getting funding for Border Patrol and the Bureau of Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And that's how I see the problem being resolved, is by certainly tripling or quintupling, in some cases, the budgets of these law enforcement organizations, Border Patrol and ICE, that works internally. ICE, there are two elements, essentially. United States Border Patrol, which protects our perimeters, and the Bureau of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, formerly the INS, which protects our interiors and our seaports and our airports. And both those departments need a drastic inflow of money. The money has been supposedly made available, but it's never been appropriated. And that's the problem with the U.S. Senate in particular blocking $3 or $4 billion a year going to these organizations to shore them up and give them more support staff.
Now, isn't the idea of deporting, though, 12 million people, especially if or 33 million even, as you've estimated, especially if some of them are the parents of American citizens who legally can't be deported, isn't that kind of a impractical and perhaps heartless solution to the problem?
It's called tough love, but it's the rule of law. And I know what you're talking about. How do you tell families, well, your parents are illegal, they have to return to China or to the United Kingdom or to Mexico. But since you, as children, are U.S. citizens under the rule of law, well, we really don't want to do that. I say balderdash. No, we're going to enforce the law. 95% of parents, in my opinion, will never leave their children. And the consequence of them coming here illegally and breaking our laws are that they are going to have to return to their homeland, and they have a choice. Either leave their children here with legal citizens or legal residents here, or they become a ward of the state, of course, like orphans if they're minors, or take them with you. They certainly will have all the rights that any U.S. citizen has, but if their parents do not want to separate themselves from the children, they're going to have to take them with them, whether it be Mexico City, Toronto, Canada, Moscow, Russia, or Beijing, China. And that's my position on it, and I'm not withdrawing from that position.